Good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, as always, Tony Defeo. And if you're joining me live, I hope you're having a great Friday evening. If you are joining me live, you can join me on YouTube or Facebook. And if you're joining me at a later date, I hope it could be on any of our audio platforms. So whatever audio platform you decide to listen to podcasts on, you can find all of our shows, and we have this show, a bunch of other live shows like The Hangover, the Steelers Preview, the Scobro Show, the Curtain Call, the War Room, the Touchdown Under Show, and then we have audio only shows such as the Retro Show, the Live Mic. Let's Ride, the Stat Geek. I was experiencing some technical difficulties there. I'm back. All right. Sorry about the few seconds live. Watch us on YouTube. Listen to us on any audio platform. And, of course, check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. We bring you news, commentary, draft breakdowns, free agency. Anytime there's a transaction, anytime there's any kind of news, Steeler-related, NFL-related, we bring it to you. So please check that out. Please like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Please check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter. Michael Beck, the deputy editor, he does a great job with the social media platform. So please check all that out. Welcome to everybody in the live chat. There's Chad Landsman, Ben Tavares, Steeler Chick 46, Creed's with us, Eric Piera, Stacy Lynn, Steelers Pittsburgh. I think that's it for now. So thank you all for joining me. I hope we have a great show tonight. Just Me is here. Jared Devil. Wow. Great lineup tonight. Great audience, and I love it. And as always, I have a few topics I wanted to discuss on tonight's show, starting with the draft, of course. That's everybody's favorite subject right now is the NFL draft. And here we are 4 weeks from tonight as I'm doing this show right now. 4 weeks from tonight, it'll be the second round of the NFL draft. And we'll be discussing either the Steelers' most recent pick or who they're going to pick in the second round or in the third round. That's when the day two is the second and third round. And we'll by then we'll know who they picked in the first round the night before on Thursday. So we're less than a month away now from the draft. So as I've been saying all offseason, this is about the time when I really start to ramp up my research and my interest in the draft. I don't lie. I'm not gonna. When I say I didn't pay attention in January or February or a lot of March, I wasn't kidding. It just I like to wait. I like to wait until about a month out before I really start to get into it. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one is I think it's okay to wait. Even back when I was a teenager, I wouldn't really get into it until 3 or 4 weeks before the draft. Now, granted, the internet didn't exist then, and social media didn't exist, and I didn't have all this info at my fingertips. So I'm sure, knowing me the way I did back then, had I had all that info at my fingertips, I probably would have just been reading it and researching it nonstop and obsessing over it. But I didn't, so I waited until about a month or so before I got into it. And I think it to me, the thing about the draft that drives me crazy, and in a good way, because we're all fans, is no matter what you say, no matter what position you decide, I think they should draft that person or draft that position. There's always like 45 people going, how can you say that? That's crazy. That's crazy. So-and-so was a systems player. So-and-so can't read defenses, so there's always, there's thousands of people out there that put a lot of mental and emotional energy into the draft, and they spend months covering it. So, there, no matter what you say, again, there's just, you can pick one player. There's so many other people that say that's a crazy direction to go. How can you say that, Tony? And Let's welcome some more people into the live chat. Snowman, Michael O'Malley, Dean McCrae. I think I saw Donald Nolan in here. Lots of legends tonight. George Teston. Awesome. So anyway, you might be saying, well, Tony, isn't that the half the fun? Arguing with about sports with your friends? I'm like, yeah, but my friends don't usually act like people do on the internet. I mean, my friends aren't, they don't listen to your opinion on something and go, that was a trash opinion. That was garbage. I can't believe you would say that. It's garbage. You're an idiot. You suck. I can't believe whoever's in charge of your family, I can't believe they would let you have that kind of opinion. I used to love your family. Now I don't hang out with your family anymore because of your opinions. They suck. You suck. And we're never coming back. You're not invited to our picnics anymore. My friends don't do that, but people on the internet do. They do it all the time, right? And my friends don't make up fake names and stalk me for a month because of my opinions. And I certainly don't have to ban my friend from my house because they won't leave me alone because of my opinions. So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different arguing with my friends as opposed to arguing with people on the internet. So that's another reason why I kind of wait until a month out before I really start getting into the draft and sharing my hard opinions on it. And I realize it's all going to happen anyway. But at least I like to only deal with it for like a month instead of 3 months, which other people who are braver than me certainly endure that stuff every time they release a mock draft or a big board or whatever. And another reason why I like to wait is because you just don't know how it's, there's just so much information coming at you all the time. And what people think of a player in January is going to be a lot different than what they think of him in March. Even today, like today's what, as I'm doing this show, it's April 2nd. And I was looking at a bunch of big boards today. And Mac Jones, for example, the Alabama quarterback, Mac Jones, I've seen him ranked 13th, 28th, I think in the 40s, he's all over the place. Landon Dickerson, he's the guy with I think I misspoke last week, and I don't think it was my fault. I think it was the expert I was listening to on the radio. He mentioned Creed Humphrey as the guy with the knee injury, but it's actually Landon Dickerson, the center from Alabama. He has some really serious injury issues to deal with. He's coming off a torn ACL, I believe. So I just assumed he wouldn't even be drafted until at least the second or third round. But I was looking at Bleacher Report's big board, and they had him ranked 8th, And Creed Humphrey, who I'm starting to really get high on, I've seen him ranked 25th, 45th, 60th, all over the place. I mean, not exactly those numbers. Don't pin me down to it, internet, but around like roughly those areas. I've seen him ranked, all over the place. So, it's hard to get a feel for it when you're that far out. And it seems hard to get a feel for it now, 4 weeks before the draft. So that's another reason why I like to wait. And another thing is you just don't know how things are going to, free agency really gives you a better idea of how the draft will unfold based on that activity. I think it's safe to say we're pretty much through the major part of the free agency period. And I think now we have a pretty good idea of what the Steelers are going to do. And that's, they could do anything. All the needs that they had, the perceived positional needs that they had going into free agency, I think are still on the table, as we've discussed before. There's, offensive tackle, center, of course, running back, tight end, inside linebacker. I mean, that's 5 different positions. And in some years, you could check one of those positions off the list. You could take them off the list based on what they did in free agency. Like last year, I think going into free agency, we assumed that tight end would be something they would have to focus on if they didn't sign a free agent in free agency, or I'm sorry, if they didn't sign a tight end in free agency, they would have to pick one pretty high in the draft. Well, they went out and they signed Eric Ebron, and Vance McDonald was still here, so you were pretty much set at tight end. People kind of forgot about it, and sure enough, they didn't even draft a tight end last year. The year before, they went out and signed Steven Nelson to a pretty decent deal, and cornerback was still on the table, I think, heading into the draft, but it really wasn't it didn't seem that urgent that they go out and draft one. And sure enough, that by signing Steven Nelson, they became more focused on inside linebacker, and they knew that they had to find Ryan Shazier's replacement. They kind of missed out on that kind of player the year before when all the inside linebackers were gone before their pick at the end of the first round. So they traded up and they got Devin Bush. So, I think free agency kind of crystallizes everything and what teams are going to do. So that's another reason why I like to wait. So I think now if you look at here we are 4 weeks out, as I just said, there's nothing when it comes to positions of need. There's nothing that's off the table, and the way it looks, there's probably going to be somebody from at least one of those positions for them when they draft at 24, maybe even more than one position. There might be 2 or 3 tackles. There's certainly going to be a center. There might be a couple running backs. Tight end, Kyle Pitts is one of the top 5 prospects, so he's not going to be anywhere around. But the Fremuth, I think it's Fremuth from Penn State, he might be there. That might be a little bit high for him, but who knows? Maybe they fall in love with him. Inside linebacker, a lot of people are talking about Zavin Collins from Tulsa, and he's certainly a stud. But what if Micah Parsons falls to them? I mean, a lot of people say he's the best athlete in the draft, at least on defense anyway. I mean, there's somebody, you pair him with Devin Bush, look out. So he might be hard to pass on. So there's any number of possibilities, but there's certainly more knowns now than unknown than there were a few months ago. A few months ago, when you're trying to gauge this draft and who was going to be there and what teams were what direction they were going to go, and it was a lot harder. Now it's coming more into focus. I mean, you look at the top of the draft, right? With the 49ers making the trade they did last week, they move up to 3rd. Now it looks like it's going to be Trevor Lawrence number 1, Zach Wilson number 2, and I mean, I've seen Fields from Ohio State projected to go 3rd. I've seen Mac Jones projected to go 3rd, which I think is crazy, but you just never know, right? A lot of people are high on Trey Lance from North Dakota State, so you could have 4 quarterbacks gone within the first 5 or 6 picks, right? Certainly by the first 10 picks. I mean, do you see any of those quarterbacks getting past New England? They draft in the middle of the first round. So you have 5 quarterbacks that, if quarterback wasn't such a pressing need, maybe they don't get drafted as high because maybe when you look at a lot of the big boards, a lot of these quarterbacks are kind of down. But when you look at the mock drafts, they're getting picked near the top of the within the first 5 or 10 picks because there's such a premium on quarterbacks. So depending on what happens with the quarterback position, a player that you didn't think would be there might fall to 24. So, now we can see that based on some trades and how free agency has played out, right? So that's another reason why I like to wait. So now I'm really starting to get into it. And I just want to see who else has checked in on the live chat. There's Simon Ellis, Ariel, Russ Obenstein, who's and here's Snowman, who says Trey Lance is a beast. A lot of people, whoops, once again, I was a second behind. Here we are. And a lot of people are really liking Trey Lance. A year ago this time, who knew about Trey Lance, right? Now he's a rising star in this draft. So that's what I mean. There's so many things that happen between January and now that it seems to me it makes more sense. For me personally, I know a lot of people are way more into the draft than I am. So they really never stop paying attention. Whereas I just wait. I like this. There's all these moving parts out here in draft land in January and February, and then they start to come more into focus around this time of year. So to me, this is the fun time of the year for the draft. And each mock draft now takes on people get more and more into the mock draft season, and quite frankly, they kind of take these mock drafts a little bit too seriously. So, whenever you see somebody release one that has Pittsburgh taking an edge rusher, I saw that today on NFL.com. There was one published on Behind the Steel Curtain, Steelers 11. He published one. I think he had them taking an outside linebacker, and people are like, "Whoa, this can't be happening." But it's just a mock draft. It doesn't. It's not real. You just don't know what's going to happen. But I mean, there's so many mock drafts that are published. I think these people they get kind of bored and they want to throw in a twist. In fact, they do. They say they title them, "Here's my latest mock draft. This time with a twist. This time with a lot of trades." So it's just it's something that it's fun, but it shouldn't be taken as gospel, because you just don't know. You don't know what these teams are thinking. You don't know what if they're trying to throw you off their scent with their pro day visits and their non-visits, right? So, but that leads me to my next topic, and see what else. What do we have people saying here in the live chat? And here's one from Russ, and he says, "Was watching film on Jalen Mayfield O-line today. Really like him. Hell of a run blocker." There you go. Jalen Mayfield. Has he been linked to the Steelers at all? No, but he's an offensive tackle, and he's a candidate to go in the first round. So there's somebody that might be the Steelers pick. You just don't know. Steelers Pittsburgh, and he says, or she says, "We don't really need to go up. Can't afford to give up the draft capital." Well, you can afford it if it's for a player that can really make a difference for your franchise. I mean, I think a lot of times people put a little bit too much stock in third, fourth, fifth round picks or next year's picks or whatever. I mean, they traded a first round pick to get Mika Fitzpatrick. They didn't have a first round pick last year, but they had Mika Fitzpatrick. So, sometimes quality is better than quantity when it comes to the draft. So I think they could always afford it, but I do agree. I don't see them trading up. I think, as I said, almost knocked over my microphone. As I said, they'll probably have their choice of 2 or 3 different positions of need whenever their turn comes up at 24, unless there's a major run on a specific position other than quarterback, which we know there's going to be a run on quarterbacks. I think they'll have their shot at any number of positions. So, but that brings me to an interesting discovery from last week, and that's Creed Humphrey, the center from Oklahoma. A lot of people are projecting him to go in the second, third round, but the more I think about it, the more I think he might go at the end of the first round, because there aren't that many centers out there, right? There's a lot of offensive tackles. There's a few running backs that might go in the first round, but as far as center, there seems to be Creed Humphrey, Landon Dickerson, but he has huge question marks, and then some interesting prospects from smaller schools like I always forget that guy's name. One from I don't want to say his name. I'll get it wrong, but you know who I mean. You'll put it in the live chat. So but I think Creed Humphrey, he's that kind of player that he doesn't wow you with his athletic skills, but he seems like somebody that he could be your starting center for the next 5-10 years, right? And centers are never sexy, but if they're good, then it does wonders for your offensive line. It does wonders for your look at the close relationship with Ben and Marquise Pouncey. They almost retired together. So I think a center is somebody that can be the leader of the line. He's somebody that the quarterback leans on. Look at how important Pouncey was to the line. He called out so many of the formations along the line. He was definitely the head honcho along the line for the entire time that he played here. So I think if you can find a player like that, and if Humphrey can be that kind of player, I'm not saying he's going to be a borderline Hall of Famer like Pouncey. We don't know. He might be a total bust, but he seems to be somebody that could be a safe pick for them. And they still might have their shot at a offensive line, or I'm sorry, at a tackle or a running back, or even an inside linebacker in the second round. But they might not have their shot at the top center in the second round. So I think if you can address a position of need by taking Creed Humphrey at 24, I think you have to go for it. But we'll see what happens. I did a lot of draft simulations, and I was surprised that I never picked Humphrey. I just wanted to see what would happen if he got past 24, and he rarely made it out of the first round, which based on a lot of what people were saying, and based on his big board rankings, I expected him to always be in the second round, but he was often drafted by the Packers. I saw him drafted by the Giants. The Chiefs drafted him a lot. It's just a simulation. It doesn't mean anything, but I think it shows you when teams haven't needed a particular position, even if a player isn't maybe ranked high overall as other players are at different positions, it can really enhance his draft stock. I think we see that with quarterbacks all the time. It happens every year with quarterbacks. So why can't it be? If the Packers need a center, if the Chiefs are willing to draft the center in the first round, why can't Pittsburgh? So that's just those are my thoughts on Creed Humphrey, and I don't want to get too much into that because I wrote an article about it the other day. I hope you read it, but basically, I think that I was shocked at how suddenly how I became intrigued by Creed Humphrey, just by reading things about him. The fact that he was a consistent starter, team leader. Not a physical freak of nature, but there aren't very many centers that seem to be that anyway. So, but he seems like somebody that if you hit on him, if he's the real deal, he could be a fixture on your line for a decade. And with the longevity of centers compared to running backs, for example, maybe it's a better option to draft a center in the first round. Maybe you get your running back in the second or third round. As I've said many times, a lot of people have said, if you can fix that line, that'll do wonders for the running game. So those are my thoughts on those two subjects I just covered, and that will bring a close part one of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook Live, don't go anywhere. Please stay with me. If you're listening on an audio platform, say on Easter Sunday or on Saturday or whenever, please download part two of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack, and I will be right back. And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. And here's welcome back to part two of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, Tony Defeo. If you downloaded part two, I thank you for that. If you stuck with me on YouTube and Facebook, I thank you for that too. And I'm sorry, I was distracted with the live chat. And this is from Ezra. This is what I mean about people always wanting to, like they put too much stock in certain parts of the offseason. And he says, so if we don't re-sign Connor Snell, he means Benny Snell. He's not a fan. As you can tell, Ezra's not a big fan of Benny Snell Jr. Snell is our day one starter. No, because that's what the draft is for. You don't know what's going to happen with the draft. Maybe they get to the 24th pick in the first round, and maybe they just have to decide between Creed Humphrey and one of the running backs. Maybe two of those running backs are gone. Maybe Najee Harris is gone, and Etienne is gone from Clemson, and the only one that's left of the big three is Javonte Williams. Maybe that's somebody they thought they could have gotten in the second round, but they get him in the first round. They draft him at 24, or maybe they get one of those guys in the second round, because you can get a really good running back in the second round. We've seen it in the past. We saw it last year. So it doesn't mean anything yet. It just means that if they don't re-sign Connor, it just means that running back is still a high priority heading into the draft. And they could address it in the first round. They could address it in the second round. They could address it in the third round. And if they do draft a running back in one of those three rounds, They're probably doing so with an idea that he could be their starter sooner rather than later. Especially with a running back. A running back, you can not even know the playbook, and still play a lot as a rookie, because it's all about just, finding the hole, hitting the hole, instincts. I mean, it's the one, as they say, running backs maybe the one position that you can excel at as a rookie and still, not totally, not be up to snuff on the playbook. So it doesn't mean that Snell will be the starter. It just means that they didn't re-sign Connor, and maybe they're going to make running back a high priority in the draft. So that's wanted to address that. That was a question from Ezra. I think it was rhetorical, but I addressed it anyway. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about is the re-signing of Tyson Alualu. Talk about a shocker, huh? Nobody saw that coming. I don't think anybody saw him leaving. When it was first reported at the beginning of the free agency period that he was signing with the Jaguars, I think everybody was like, yeah, I know I was. We were like, I can't believe this. That's one problem I didn't expect them to have is trying to find Alualu's replacement. Like he, at the age of 33, he'll be 34 next month. He seemed like somebody that would be pretty easy to retain, easy enough anyway. But the Jaguars offered him a lot of guaranteed money. That was his original team, so he signed with them. But in the interim, he wound up contracting COVID-19. So he couldn't really sign the contract. He agreed to terms, but he couldn't sign the actual contract. So he sat around for 10 days. I guess he was in quarantine. And I guess the more he thought about it, his family's here. His family's settled here. He reportedly has built his dream house. He has kids. And he decided, you know what? I'm gonna change my mind. And I'm going to come back to Pittsburgh. Apparently there were people trying to recruit him, which his teammates were trying to recruit him and get him to stay, and I can certainly see why. So Alualu's back, and I think it's great. And that is one free agent signing or a re-signing that you can say, okay, that kind of takes defensive line off the table. Not that Alualu's a long-term answer there, but I mean that's one of the areas of the team, at least as far as starters are concerned. As long as you have Alualu back, it's pretty darn strong with Hayward, Alualu, and of course Tuitt. The depth might be a little shaky, but in terms of a starting three, and again, I realize there are a lot of sub packages now in the modern NFL and modern defenses, and Alualu doesn't play nearly as much as Hayward and Tuitt, but he's still considered a starter in their base defense. So to have him back and to have that line still intact, at least the starters, I think it's a big deal. And now they can focus on other areas of their defense and trying to maybe add another inside linebacker, maybe another cornerback, although I'm sure they're pretty high on Justin Lane and James Pierre, and I know they're high on Cam Sutton, so who was a recent draft pick as well. So we'll see. And a lot of people applauded Alualu for having a change of heart, and they applauded the Steelers' culture. A lot of people are under the impression that it's a bad environment, that locker room, and but Juju re-signed and Alualu re-signed, so I think it says a lot about the kind of organization that the Steelers have, and just because they don't win championships doesn't mean it's a toxic environment. It just means maybe they don't have enough talent to win a championship, or they haven't had enough luck, or they've had some untimely injuries, right? There's a lot that goes into winning a championship, and there's a lot that goes into not winning a championship, and it's not just because you have a lot of players with bad attitudes or lack of desire or whatever, So it was nice to see, and I'm sure he took less money ultimately to come here. I don't know what the deal was. I'm sure it was similar on paper, but I almost guarantee you he didn't get, quote unquote, the, no pun intended, the same kind of guaranteed money he would have gotten from Jacksonville. I think he was set to get $4 million in guaranteed money or close to $4 million. And his last deal that he signed here prior to this one, I think the only guaranteed money he got up front was $1.75 million. So it's probably a similar deal, but he's at the end of his career. He's made a decent amount of money. Maybe he feels like, the amount of money he would have made, the extra money he would have made in Jacksonville, wasn't enough to unroot his family or uproot his family, I should say, and move them thousands of miles away again. So it was nice to see, and it was a pleasant surprise. So that's all I wanted to say about that. And let's see what else we have here as far as comments from the live chat. And of course, there's always talk talking about Randy. Poor Randy, he's gone now. People are still giving him trouble. Creed says Randy was terrible at play calling. When the D knows what the O is running before the ball snapped, not good. And I'm sure there was some of that there, but it was also, I think the talent was lacking in some areas too. So, especially on the line, I think the line played a bigger role than anything else. Just my opinion. But now I'm on Team at Canada. I can't wait to see what innovations and unpredictability he can bring to the table. I just wanted to close out tonight's show. I'm going to take some questions, of course, but I wanted to close out my portion of the show. The Q&A is always your portion, of course. And I want to talk about my favorite draft memory. And that occurred, believe it or not, way back in 1987. I was just shy of turning 15. And it was the last year that the draft was held on a Tuesday morning. Believe it or not, back then, the draft came on a weekday morning. It was 7 o'clock, no prime time. It was all held on the same day. And my mom let me stay home from school that day. Probably a mistake, considering I'm still trying to find out what I want to do when I grow up. But whatever. She let me stay home from school and watch it. And it was a lot of fun. It was a tremendous amount of fun. And it was the first time I really got to sit around and watch the draft, the entire thing. And of course, that was the year that they drafted Rod Woodson, 10th overall. Nobody expected him to still be there. I mean, and if you look at his career resume, he probably should have been the first player picked that year. But the thing I found interesting about that draft is Chuck Noll, who was the coach at the time, he didn't send anybody to produce Pro Day or whatever they called it back then, because he didn't think there was any way that Rod Woodson would still be there at number 10. And, the Browns, they drafted some linebacker named Mike Jenkins or whatever his name was. Obviously, if I can't remember his name, it shows you how much of an impact he made. But a lot of teams passed over Woodson, and he fell in their laps, and they drafted him. So I guess the moral of that story is the Pro Day is not always an indicator of what a team's going to do, because you just never know how a team's going to respond if a player that they didn't expect to be there falls, drops to them. So, but it was a fun day, and I didn't even know who Rod Woodson was, but I was just happy that I got to be home from school, and everybody universally praised the pick, which is not normal. Usually when the Steelers make their first round selection, it's probably like 60-40, 70-30 in favor of the pick. There's rarely universal praise for a pick, and with Rod Woodson there was, and it's something it's rare. And the following year, 1988, that was the year that they moved the draft to Sundays. I think it started at noon. And that was my least favorite memory, because I wanted him to draft Lorenzo White or John Stevens, and they drafted Aaron Jones. And here's a $5 super chat from Snowman, our resident Robin Masters, and I forgot it. I didn't see it initially, but he pledges $5, and I thank you for that. And he says, no matter who the Steelers pick, not everyone is going to be happy. Happy Easter, family. And no truer words have ever been spoken. No matter who they pick, somebody's going to be angry. I remember people were angry about TJ Watt. So there you go. But anyway, the following year, Pittsburgh selected Aaron Jones, the defensive end from Eastern Kentucky, who I had never heard of. And that was a big disappointment for me. I could not get over that. And, of course, Aaron Jones, he had a nothing career. He played for a few teams, really didn't do anything. His first offseason, before his rookie year, he predicted that he would get like 18 sacks for the Steelers, and which was nice to have that kind of confidence, but I don't even think he had 18 sacks his entire career. So he was a big disappointment. But that draft did teach me a lesson that stayed with me for what? It's 33 years now. And it's all about the big picture. And that draft was pretty nondescript overall. However, in the second round, they drafted this center out of Kentucky named Armani Dawson. At the time, I was pretty disappointed. I'm like, why aren't they getting some exciting players? This is crap. And then, of course, in the third round, they drafted Chuck Lanza, another center. So we're like, my uncle and I were the same age. We were watching the draft. And I'm like, why do they keep drafting centers? This is crap. Later on in that draft, they picked John Jackson, who was an offensive tackle from Eastern Kentucky, where they drafted Aaron Jones. And John Jackson went on to have a pretty decent career as a left tackle for the Steelers. He played for them for 10 years. By the time he left here after the 97 season, he was a pretty integral part of their team, and they didn't want him to leave. But he wanted to get one huge contract before he retired, and that's what he did. Nothing wrong with that. And of course, you know about Dawson, Hall of Fame center, maybe the greatest center in team history. You can certainly make an argument for that between him and Mike Webster. But regardless, he was a legend. So those picks weren't exciting at the time. Excuse me. They weren't exciting at the time, but they paid dividends over time. I think that's an important lesson to learn. Not that I'm trying to preach to you about how to feel about the Steelers pick, but I always go back to last year. Chase Claypool, somebody found out about who they were going to pick in the second round well before I could see it on TV, and it was posted all over Twitter. And I'll never forget that one person with the all capitals, no, like it was like the worst thing that ever happened. And of course, Chase Claypool had a great rookie year. So you just never know. It's exciting to when they draft a known player in the first round, a skill position player, a quarterback, running back. It's all exciting, but it's really all about the fall and the winter and what they can do over the long haul. So that's about all I want to talk about tonight. And I will open things up to some questions. And here is one from Eric Piera. And he says, can we afford Justin Houston or keeping Connor? Maybe Carl Joseph? I don't know. I know probably Connor's your best bet there as far as somebody they can afford. Justin Houston, to me, he seems like somebody who might be kind of at the end of the rope as far as what he could add. I mean, he might be a decent veteran to bring in for depth. Carl Joseph, I mean, obviously he's not going to be a starter. He would be a backup. So they could probably afford all three of those guys. Carl Joseph seems to be one who's been linked to Pittsburgh lately. So maybe it's somebody that they're interested in, but it all depends on what he's looking for and what they can afford to pay him. I mean, money's always going to be a problem with them under their current cap situation. So let's see what else we have here. And here's one from Devin Logan, and he asks, who's the biggest playmaker would have a shot at getting at 24? If you mean on offense, Probably one of the running backs, Najee Harris, and Etienne, Javonte Williams. If you're talking about defense, I don't know. I mean, it could be. I know a lot of people love Collins from Tulsa. He seems like somebody who could, if he's the real deal, he could be a special player in the NFL. I know receivers are pretty deep. I've seen a lot of receivers picked to go around the time Pittsburgh does, but I obviously don't see them drafting a receiver in the first round. So if I had to pick one, it'd probably be one of the running backs. There's almost a 100% guarantee that one of those running backs is going to be there at 24. It's just a matter of, does Pittsburgh prioritize that position over another one? Or are they confident that they're going to get a good back in the second or third round? I don't know. We'll see. And here's one from Donald Nolan, and he asks another draft question. Did I skip it? Here we go. I'm really slow tonight. I'm sorry. I'm having I guess connection issues. And he asks, there we are. Tony, do you take Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle, great run blocking guy, or Creed Humphrey, center, which you wrote about in your article? If Creed Humphrey is there and there's a plethora of tackles there, a few tackles, and you feel like you can get one in a later round, I would definitely go with Creed Humphrey, because I think what you have on your currently on the roster, you just signed Zach Banner, you just signed Joe Haeg, obviously you have Shooks for another year. I think that position is in a little bit better shape than center, so I would definitely go with Humphrey. And it doesn't mean any of those tackles that they already have are the answer. We don't know yet. That's what's so intriguing about this draft is they're young at tackle, but it doesn't mean that they're set at tackle. Robert Spillane, he showed a lot last year in filling in for Bush, but it doesn't mean he's going to continue to progress. Running back, I mean, gosh, it's what they currently have is like there's nothing there that you can really feel great about. So there's and tight end's another one where they don't have a number 2 tight end, but at the same time, it doesn't appear that there's more than one true first round prospect in the draft. So there's so many question marks. I could see them going in any number of directions, but it's all going to depend on who's there when they pick, which is obviously a no duh Tony statement from me, but that's how it is. And that's what's so intriguing about the draft, especially when you're drafting at the end of the first round like they are. You just don't know how it's going to fall. You just don't know. It could be, I've seen like 8 to 10 tackles with first round grades. I've seen lots of cornerbacks with first round grades. C cornerbacks, and but I've only seen 3 running backs who are considered first round candidates. And Williams, the last big board I saw, he was ranked 43rd or something. So you don't know. And that's another thing about it. There's so many different opinions out there about the draft. It's funny. And let's see. According to Ezra, Felicia has a mic drop. I got to find out what her mic drop is. Hopefully, it's not at my expense. But even if it is, you go for it. And let's see what she says. She says, Cree Moats gave me a shout out like the BTSC staff does. I was on 2 cruises with him. I am so silly. I was Moats' lifeline at a game he was playing. Wow. Felicia is a legend. She's a legend. She was she Art II, from what I understand, answered one of her questions at his recent press conference. So Felicia she's a legend and mic drop indeed. Let's see what else we have here from you guys. And here's one from James Barnhart, and he asked, Jesse James is available, any chance of getting him? Yeah, I mean, why not? He has a history with the team. his best role is as the number 2 tight end. They need a number 2 tight end. Just like everything else, it all comes down to price. So I would certainly give that a consideration. And here's one from Ezra. Sign AP, meaning Adrian Peterson, Frank Gore, and call it a day. If you do that, you might have to have a doctor on standby because those guys are getting up there. But they've definitely beaten the odds when it comes to running backs and longevity. I don't like Frank Gore. He seems like he's been playing since the early 2000s, and same with all day Adrian Peterson. But yeah, I'm sure they're going to go in a different direction. I think they want to get younger and find somebody at the beginning of his career at that position. I think it's the best way to go. And here's one from, sorry, you guys are, here we are, from Eric Pereira again. He says, Mike Tomlin was at Notre Dame. Was you looking at tight end or O-line or someone else? Any inside scoop, Tony? I do not have any inside scoop on that. I know they have a decent tackle prospect whose name I forget. I saw it on the one of the big boards. I can't think of his name. I'm sure you guys know it, but I think they have an outside linebacker too. That's pretty good, but I don't see them going in that direction. I don't have any scoop, no. But they've gone to a lot of pro days. I mean, they've been at Georgia's. I think they've been at Alabama's. I think they were at Tulsa. I'm not sure. But they've been at a lot of pro days, so it's hard to say what they're looking at. But they're clearly covering all their tracks. That's what all these teams do. They hit as many pro days as they can. They're constantly studying tape and measurements and doing interviews, and it's such a thorough process now that there are no more secrets. The only secret is what they're thinking, and they're never going to tell us. And if they do tell us something, they can go in a completely different direction because they're so worried, they're so paranoid about somebody coming along and stealing their thunder, so to speak. And here's one from Ezra, and he says, "My inside scoop: Pouncey comes back before the draft to save us a pick." Wow, that would be a scoop. I mean, that'd be amazing. I don't know. I mean, I don't see that happening, but you never know. I didn't see Alualu coming back either. If I had to bet on it, probably not. But Harrison came back how many times? James Harrison after he retired. So on that note, I think I'm going to call it a night. I thank you for your participation. I thank Snowman for the donation. Congratulations to Felicia for being a celebrity now. You guys are awesome. I hope you have a great holiday weekend. And I will talk to you on Monday with Brian Anthony Davis. So you guys have a great weekend, and go Steelers. Take care.